Everyone, how are we doing?
Good.
I live in a country of Belgium where no one talks at all, so I know that there's a lot of nationalities here, and especially the very, very enthusiastic Moroccans. Can we try it one more time? Are we ready? Fantastic. I saw that they put this super interesting session on the second day after lunch, so I can tell that we have the most amazing speakers for you today. The topic is a very interesting topic. The topic is about cybersecurity and whether or not cybersecurity goes beyond things that are policy-oriented, things that are technical, or things that are maybe more at a strategic level. And we are going to cover all three of these elements today, and we're gonna put ourselves back on schedule so that we finish before 4:30. How does that sound? A little more enthusiasm? Okay, perfect. So my name is Erica Lutz, and I am the Executive Director of the Fulbright Commission. I am based in Brussels, Belgium, where half of the Moroccan population lives in Brussels, so I'm so happy to be here in my second home. We have a fantastic lineup of people who are here today to talk about various things. Our first speaker today is actually the head of the stock exchange. Before we dive into our actual speakers, I wanted to say a few things about cybersecurity. There are so many different types of cybersecurity. In fact, we even used ChatGPT to help us out a little bit today when we were talking about what is cybersecurity. So here are some of the various titles. We have critical infrastructure security, or maybe we're talking about network security, or endpoint security, which is like your devices, your laptops, etc., or application security. Maybe we're talking about cloud security, or information security, like protecting people's data, that GDPR topic that so many of us are talking about these days. Or maybe we're talking about mobile security, like our devices and smartphones and things like that. So those are some of the security aspects. What if we talk about things that are related to attacks, cyber attacks? So we have malware, so suspicious software. Everyone's had that on theirs, for sure, on their laptop. Or it could be ransomware. Or it could be phishing, such as emails, etc. Or maybe it's going to be insider threats, like employees. Maybe we'll hear more about this later. And even distributed denial of services. There are a lot of trends that we're seeing today in cybersecurity. In fact, one of the things that was really shocking to me when I was doing research about this topic is to find out that cyber attacks damage both businesses and lives. I think many of us know some cases of both a company that's been damaged or a person that's been damaged by cybersecurity. But what I didn't know is that according to the IBM cost of data breach in 2023, the average cost of a data breach in 2023 was $4.5 million US. That is up 15% since 2020. So with that, I'm going to turn to a very high-level discussion, almost a strategy-level discussion, to talk about cybersecurity. We have brought in a very interesting speaker who needs to leave at 3:20, so we pushed him first to the agenda. What I thought was very funny about this next speaker is that both he, Tarek, and Rita both went to university together. They were 1 year apart in Paris, which I thought was very funny. Did you know each other? Yes. Oh, okay, so even better. So our first speaker is Tarek Senhaji. He is a graduate of the École Polytech in Paris and ENSEE. He began his career as a finance manager at the IFC in Washington, D.C. After Washington, D.C., he went to work for many, many different companies, Société Générale and many others, in London. After spending time in London, he's been, I guess, overall 23 different years in different sectors and has returned to Morocco. And here, before he started his new position, you've been in this position for 3 years as the CEO of the Casablanca Stock Exchange. He was the managing director for Ithmar Capital, a strategic investment fund. So maybe you can start by talking a little bit about some of these high-level conversations that we're having. This is literally what people said to me is, to start, let's call in the money man. So without further ado, I bring you the money man, Tarek.
Well, thank you very much. I think you highlighted two things in your introduction, which are generally associated with IT, energy and connection. And we have to acknowledge that it's the human element first. So thank you for that introduction. So let me start by saying, why am I here? which is probably the first question I asked myself when I got this invitation. I can see the reasoning. Obviously, the Casablanca Stock Exchange is the first and the largest fintech in the country, and the sovereignty of data is important. But I have my colleague who's sitting here, Si Mohamed Saad, who is the mastermind of IT, as well, one of the biggest IT thinkers in this country. So I said, Si Mohamed, can you please explain to me the subject first, and then we decide whether I should go there. And when he explained to me the subject, I realized, wow, why is this only a technical discussion between IT guys? This is so much more, and some really huge things are happening which are going to impact all of us. So the good news is that I've learned a lot over the past few weeks, and hopefully that will make it easier for me to explain it. And the bad thing is I had a board meeting which was scheduled, so I have to leave a little bit early this panel. So when I'm facing complex questions and complex things, and I try to explain to them, I tell stories and I give analogies, because I think the subject is so complex that probably you are seeing on your side as well. As soon as you talk about sovereignty and you talk about economic costs, you can see that the explosion of dimensions that this brings. So let me start by the analogies between money and what I call now the economics of data. So many centuries or millennia ago, man decided that they have to have an information reference for transactions. So money actually is not used to buy things. If you think about it, money is just a reference point. Once, a long time ago, we decided that we'll go with the meter, except a few countries which like to be exotic. We just defined something and we called it a meter. So essentially, we needed something that was making it quite obvious. Obviously, if you have 100 cows, you are 100 times wealthier than someone who has 1 cow. But how do we go from a cow to someone who is selling wood to someone who is selling other goods? And that's when we invented the money. And so money is an information about your wealth and your ability to connect different things. The second thing that we know for a fact is that civilization is built on, again, information, but not the information of money alone, knowledge in general. And so we were convinced, I mean, there have been civilizations more conducive to that than others, but we were convinced that the more we share knowledge, the more we are going to be wealthy and we are going to live well. So in the old days, I'm trying to make a point, I'll come to it, don't worry, but in the old days, the most powerful nations were the nations which were either around the Mediterranean or on the Silk Road, because those were the nations that exchanged the most. They had a lot of trade. When Julius Caesar decided, I'll go and invade the British Islands, he quickly realized that actually there is not much there. So the wealthiest, and then obviously with history, that knowledge, what the IT guys call backbone, that knowledge backbone moved into the Atlantic, and then it moved elsewhere, and probably now it's a bit everywhere, but there are still some backbone there. But until very recently, that relationship between knowledge sharing and wealth, you couldn't put a number on it. And as you know, as scientists, we like that. What's happening today is that there is a real economics of data, and data, you can quantify how much it's worth, and you can, as well, we got into a point that money maybe soon will be replaced by a piece of code, which is essentially knowledge. So I think it's, in the history of humanity, it's quite interesting that we've gone full circle, and now maybe money will disappear to be replaced by pure information. The second thing, since I like to tell stories in order to explain things that I just recently understood, let me give you a couple of examples from history about the complexities of what we are dealing here with cybersecurity. So the first one, everybody knows the story. IT was developed because the British put a lot of effort into decoding the Enigma machine. And the Enigma machine was a way for the German army to communicate without the Allied forces knowing about it. Probably everybody knows the story that the Allied got very lucky because a German submarine which sailed too close to the coast of the British island hit a rock and stopped. And so the British forces were able to have a fully functioning machine in 1941 and spend the year in order to hack it. And essentially, the cyber resilience of the German army was breached. And today, everybody knows that was probably the biggest turning point in the war. It probably saved millions of lives and shortened the war by 2-3 years. So everybody thinks, again, I'm going to continue in the analogy, everybody thinks that World War II was probably the biggest conflict in the history of humanity, the most important, but actually it wasn't. I'll take you back a little bit far, but let me take you back to the 3rd century BC, and probably the biggest conflict in the human history, at least in this side of the world, was the Punic Wars. So that was the war between the Carthaginian Empire and the newly formed Roman Empire. And here, I mean, the best way to understand economic wars is to look at actually historical wars. What was happening in the Mediterranean is that the Carthaginian Empire was dominating the whole region, thanks to, obviously, its naval force. And there was a new upstart, a Roman city, you know, those exotic Italians were starting to develop. And the Carthaginians, they just underestimated them. They talk funny, they have nice food, but they're not going anywhere. So the Romans decided, because there was clearly more and more conflict about territory, to attack the Carthaginians. And for the first couple of years, it went really badly for the Romans, until a miracle happened. There was a Carthaginian navy ship which was sailing too close to the Italian shores, and again, a gust of wind, and it blew into Roman territory. So the Romans could get a fully functioning, preserved ship from the Carthaginian army. And what they realized, they didn't have that technology, they realized that the Carthaginians were building their ships like a Lego. So they had these pieces of wood, and they had numberings on them, and it was very easy. They put the wood first, and then at the last minute, they assembled everything very quickly and very efficiently. That was like the biggest discovery for many centuries, probably. So our IT guys who are sitting in the room will probably say, the Carthaginians made a mistake. They didn't crypt their data. Because if they didn't put numbers, they put something else, maybe they could. So just to say, sovereignty, war, and decoding communication is intertwined. I'm not going to get into the specifics of today. Everybody knows as much as I do, and good for all of us. The next panelists know and will explain it much better than I do. But clearly today, there is a micro problem and a macro problem, what we call game theory problem, and my friend Professor Laraki is one of the specialists on this, so he will explain it much better than I do. But if you are an SME, a startup, an IT startup in Morocco, and you want to store some data, you can either store some data cheaply elsewhere in another country, probably European country or in the US, because of economy of scale. And you are going to save a little bit of money. Or you can store it here, have what we would call a sovereignty, which is a certain control over your data, but it's going to be more expensive. So generally, if you are CEO of a startup and money is tight, you are going to go abroad. But that obviously raises some very interesting questions, whether it's for the company, whether it's for the economy, or whether it's for the policymakers. So let me take just two theoretical examples with actual stories again, and to explain what is happening. So the first story I would like to share, everybody knows that BNP got hit with a massive fine, multi-billion fine from the US because they made a transaction in US dollar with an Iranian client. And BNP was saying, I don't understand, the transaction was completely outside of your borders, it's actually very far from your borders, why are you fining me? And the US said, well, actually it's in US dollars, so I have the right to look into it and to fine you. So let's suppose I am a company in Morocco, and I have my servers or my data is stored in the US, and someone in the US wakes up one day and said, I have a problem with your data, you have to show up to court. Then it's a big issue. Let me again illustrate, because I don't go into, simple ideas, because I was told the smartest people study in this university, so I don't need to say the whole, thing, but I'll try to go into more complex things, which actually is my question to the next panelist as well. Let's suppose that I am an SME, so I go for price. I'm going to find a good data provider, not the best necessarily, but I'm going to be reasonably happy. They have international certification, and they are tier 2 or tier 3, etc., etc. And so I give him my data, and it's stored there, and whenever I use it, I get it. So first, let's talk about the advantage. The advantage is like, okay, you live abroad, you came to Marrakesh, and you say, well, I love Marrakesh, I would love to buy a house and come spend a couple of weeks here. So if I give you a choice, I say, either you can buy a house in Marrakesh, or you can just rent it whenever you want. Clearly, the economic advantage of just renting it whenever you want is much better. So from an economic, again, from a game theory perspective, from an economic perspective, as the CEO of this SME, I am going to rent. And I'm going to rent, as I said, I'm going to do this cost-risk analysis, and I'm going to pick someone who is pretty decent. It's not going to default anytime soon, but pretty decent. What's going to happen if I want to, in 10 years or 5 years, move my data into someone else? So the issue that you have with data, especially today, in order to optimize price, the person you are giving your data to, he is not taking a server and putting on it your name and say, Tariq Senhaji data, whenever he wants it, he can fly in, and I give him a piece of equipment and he takes it with him. It's like, people of my generation remember VHS tapes. You can go and get the VHS tape and come back. That's not how it works. He's going to take that data and optimize it somewhere, tack. And the worst thing as well, he's not going to keep the data that way. He's going to work on it, he's going to crypt it, he's going to do something with it. So it's very nice to go in, but what happens when you want to get out? And I think, from what I understand, the answer is not so simple than that. So we can see that economically, it is interesting for you to get into this business. It is interesting for you to adopt it. You have no choice because your competitors will have a huge advantage over you if you don't. But there are some real issues about it, and then which are micro, and then there are some real issues on the macro level. I think everybody has seen the headlines over the past 18 months about geopolitical risk, so I'm not even going to go there. You have imagination, so you can imagine what a malevolent company or a malevolent country take that data and does with it. But there is as well some real issues there. Now, I'm going to finish with a last analogy, a last story about something that has happened in the past that could give us an idea. I was in a panel not long ago about artificial intelligence, and we had someone come in and saying, actually, in chess, more than 20 years ago, computers became much better than men at chess. because of artificial intelligence. So let me tell you how that has impacted that industry, and maybe you can take some ideas from it. So I will talk to you about the business of stock exchanges. So stock exchanges, essentially, I'm going to keep it very simple. It was in the old days in a coffee house. The first stock exchange was in Holland, and it was in a coffee houses. You go into a coffee house, you have something to sell, a piece of a company to sell, and you find someone else with a share, he wants to buy it, and you just exchange those shares. Today, since the 90s, because of IT, well, we've moved into electronic trading. So electronic trading is just a big server in the cloud somewhere. Let's assume it's in the cloud. For people of my understanding, that's good enough. And essentially, you have this marketplace. When someone wants to sell a share, he goes into that server and he says, I want to sell a share at this price. And he finds matching price on the other side. So stock exchanges had the same issues that we're talking today. What part should be sovereignty and what part should be about improving prices? And we had a two-tier approach, which has kind of, that's the equilibrium of the market after many years of debates and transactions and discussions, and which is that the big stock exchanges in developed countries were merging together, and they had this seamless marketplace because they felt that first they were comfortable with each other's regulatory frameworks, but also, I mean, we're seeing it, US, China, they felt that I hold as much against you as you hold against me, so you are not going to be doing any funny business. People like, not people, countries like us went another way. So I heard global north, global south. I don't know if it's the right expression, but the global south stock exchanges, they're sovereign. And they say, look, it costs a little bit more expensive to trade on my stock exchange than to trade on the New York Stock Exchange. But if we are looking at the impact on the real economy, yeah, well, probably not that big. I mean, if I talk about this issue of IT, if your company is a competitor to YouTube, so essentially you need a lot of data and a lot of speed, I can understand saying, well, sovereignty versus going elsewhere is going to cost a lot of money. But in your operating expenses and in your capex, most businesses, it's small. So, for example, to be very specific, in Casablanca, if you trade a share, you are going to pay 10 cents commission price. If you go to a developed country, it's 1 cent. But we are talking about cents here. Is it something that really makes the difference? And actually, that's the equilibrium that we've arrived at. But that's an equilibrium that we arrived at because, as I said, you have to find an alignment between all the stakeholders. And stakeholders on the economic side, stakeholders on the security side, and first and foremost, your policymakers, your state, needs to get involved into this discussion. As I said, it's not a subject. I think in the stock exchange, you kind of have a sense of what's discussed on the economic front. This is not a subject I see discussed very much, but it's such a huge, important subject that is going to shape all our futures, and it's very important. So I'll finish with that last analogy. It's a little bit like insurance. So if you think about it, from time to time, and unfortunately we paid the price recently, from time to time you have a catastrophe which is going to cost you a lot. And so if you are smart, you take a little bit of money every year rather than take a big catastrophe once every time it happens. And so for me, this question of sovereignty of data is either you accept to subsidize in a way or another as a society. Who pays what is not the subject at this point, but as a society to say, as a society, I should accept that there is a small insurance in order to keep the data sovereign, or you just sleep on both ears until a catastrophe hits and very bad things happen. So that's my rambling. I hope it kind of makes a little bit of sense. Thank you.
Very good. Well, I know that we only have you for 5 more minutes before you have to go to your board meeting, so I thought I would just pose one question back to you, which was a question I've been thinking about. I mean, you're such a great storyteller. You talk about money, you talk about how stock exchanges were created, but also can you talk about what the stock exchange could do for technology companies to get listed, whether that's enhancing development or growth for the country of Morocco?
Well, it's a fantastic question. I have to say it wasn't. I was supposed to talk about it, but I forgot. So I'll give you your commission later, but we don't pay that much. But thank you very much for asking. Yeah, exactly. But no, it's a very good question because we know. I mean, it's in the fantasy of all the startuppers in all the world that look, if I was in the US, I would start my company, and after a few years, I would earn multi-billions on floating it on the stock exchange. And it's kind of in the makeup of how things are done in the US, but we don't think about them and discuss them as much elsewhere. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity. Well, first, let's think a little bit about an IT business. The IT business has this specificity. I talked a lot about tradition and people cutting wood and people selling other goods. But IT is very different because when you have a piece of software, you can replicate it at zero cost or almost zero cost infinitely, which is something unique that no other industry has. Which means as well as a company that you can create value so quickly. And the second point is not that you can create it as well, but you can move it as well at almost no cost. So if you have a fantastic piece of software in Morocco, tomorrow you can find a client in India and deliver him that in a very seamless manner. And so that means that IT companies need flexibility, and I'm not going to give a big speech because everybody knows what a stock exchange can do. Stock exchange is the most flexible financing tool that you find, because if your company, let's say, 1 year its value is X, and then suddenly your company, well, you have a company in Morocco, and suddenly in your report you say, well, I found new clients in Singapore and in India, and I earned 2 contracts. As opposed to your bankers, your stock exchange is going to say, if he sold 2 contracts in that region, that means that he probably can get, let me give an estimate, 30 contracts there. So suddenly, the value of your company can go from X to 20X in 1 year. And that's the only financing tool that can do that. So it's as well, all the students and the professionals that might be in IT, think about it. Because in Morocco, we have exactly the same things happening, the same appetite. We have the best performing sector in the Casablanca Stock Exchange is the IT sector. If you bought a technology stock in the Casablanca Stock Exchange, on average, I'm not talking about the best performing stocks, on average, you would have earned 5 times your money between 2016 and today. And if we have companies that have been able to grow quickly and the stock exchange have been able to accompany them. When I say the stock exchange, it's not my money, it's investors' money who are very smart and they can see that they can make, that this company are going very well. And we have investors from Morocco, but also from all over the world. So that's one thing for the entrepreneurs. But let's move back to the question about sovereignty and about control about this data. Let me ask you a question. If you were a regulator, if you were a company, and I say, look, I have a company that can host your data, and it's owned by a family. It's owned by some guy and his family. Would you be more comfortable if I said, actually, the company is listed. The company is in a very transparent framework. There is hundreds of thousands of investors who have invested in the company. This company is on the best standards of governance because that's the condition in order to get to the stock exchange. Which do you think would go in the sense of our discussion about sovereignty, about control, about safety? Clearly as well that. So people think about the stock exchange that can make a lot of money, but one thing my client has told me as well, is that when I go outside in order to get new business, and I tell them I'm a company from a family in Morocco, they say, we like your product, but look, we're supposed to have a product for 5 years, 10 years, and as we said, something where it's easy to get in, but I really don't want to get out. Then generally they say, well, come back to see us again another time. When I go, and since they've been on the stock exchange, he said, the perception of my clients and the credibility of my company has changed completely. If you want to do business internationally, I think it's been discussed about doing business in Africa as well, helping the development of Africa. And I know UM6P and OCP are doing a lot there. But if you are a Moroccan company and you want to go into Africa, actually you really should think about that as well. And also it gives a lot of safety in foreign regulator as well. So let's suppose you go into a country and they accept that some of their data has to be outside. Would you rather be in a company which is owned by, let's say, a person, or let's say now more and more we have private equity if they are owned by a sovereign wealth fund? Would you be more comfortable with that, or would a foreign sovereign wealth fund, obviously, or would you be more comfortable saying actually it's trading in a very transparent market? So thank you for asking the question, and it allowed me to make this point.
Can we get a round of applause since Tarek is about to leave for his board meeting? Good luck. As we pivot between speakers, I thought I would take the opportunity to once again mention a few things about cybersecurity and maybe how they relate to Morocco itself. So here in Morocco, we have a bunch of different systems. We have the fundamental right to privacy, which was in Article 24 in the 2011 Constitution. There are different laws that I will refer to, about 4 of them. One is Law 908 on personal data protection. That is something that me, based in Brussels, spends a lot of time thinking about and talking about GDPR, data privacy. Number 2 is the consumer protection on online advertising and spamming. The third law is about supplementing the penal code regarding repression of offenses relating to automatic data processing systems. And the last is 520, which is the law on cybersecurity. One more word on data protection, which is that's of course the regulates and the manual and automatic processing of people's data. And there is even, and we were just talking about this before the panel, the CNDP, which is the data protection law that is here in Morocco. As I switch to this next speaker, which is a Fulbright scholar, a current Fulbright scholar at the Florida Poly in Florida, the best university ever, if Mustafa is listening. So as we know, I'm the executive director of the Fulbright Commission based in Brussels, and we have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 executive directors that are here from different Fulbright Commissions. If I can have them raise their hand, the one from Canada, the executive director from Australia, and the executive director from Morocco. So if what is so fascinating, if you don't know a lot about Fulbright scholarships, is that it's for people going to America to study for a master's, PhD, do some research or postdoc. Also, if you're coming here to, for example, Morocco or other countries that don't speak English, they could be coming to do an English teaching assistant. We also have a whole bunch of American Fulbrighters that are here today. Can I have them raise their hands as well? Woo! There is one special Fulbrighter who used to be a Fulbrighter in Belgium, Rachel, and is now here in Morocco. So this really beautiful, special connection between the two. And on that note, that's exactly the direction that we're heading, is that Alex Fernot, professor in Australia and now at Florida Poly, doing a semester sabbatical on a similar topic. So this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So Alex is a distinguished financial economist from Australia, an alum of the University of Sydney, Australia, Cambridge University, and also published over 100 publications and won over $10 million in competitive research funding. Previously, also a CEO relevant to this conversation of capital markets and a research organization, and also worked in the Sydney Futures Exchange, Credit Suisse, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. So you seem perfectly in line for this conversation. So we just had a more broad level discussion about cybersecurity, and I thought what we could turn to, as seen by some of the laws and the data that we were talking about, is talking about a more policy approach. So I turned over to Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I thought I'd start with just contextualizing cybersecurity a little bit, because we spoke about over the last, over yesterday and today, some big issues. We talked about climate change, we talked about energy, we've mentioned hunger. 600 million people on the globe go to bed hungry. We spoke about the proliferation of nuclear arms, some big topics, and now we get to cyber attacks. So cyber attacks grabbed my attention for a couple of reasons. Just before I headed over to Florida, it was immediately prior to the outbreak of the war between Russia and the Ukraine. And traditionally, wars commenced with carpet bombing, and then the ground forces moved in. But how did the Ukraine attack commence? It commenced with Russia cyber attacking and trying to knock out critical infrastructure of the Ukraine before the ground forces move in. Knock out communications, knock out power, knock out any critical infrastructure. So we live in a new world, and this is an amazing topic to kind of discuss. But also, a spokesperson for NATO has now recognised that a cyber attack could trigger, and I'm going to get this wrong, I know this, but Article 5, or is it Article 6? Article 5, and a cyber attack could be interpreted as an act of war and result in a response from NATO forces. So, very important topic, and one that I'm very excited to be working in. The work that I've been doing at Florida Poly has been focusing on the damage done by attacks, not how you solve them, but how bad are they? What's the crater that a cyber attack leaves on a business or a company when it's attacked? And earlier you mentioned a figure of $4.5 million, dead right. That's the out-of-pocket cost to the company. So that's what it costs the company to hire people to remediate its systems and make them more secure, to deal with its customers and keep them at bay. So the out-of-pocket costs are of that order, but they're a minuscule part of the crater left by cyber attacks. So if you can imagine out-of-pocket costs as being one component of the damage done by cyber attacks, the other is reputational impact. Your customers walk away. And what we know already from the research done is that 99% of the costs of a cyber attack, 99%, almost all of it, is reputational damage. The crater is that 4.5 million, multiply that by 100 and you get the true damage, average damage. So my team at Florida, we wanted to challenge the received wisdom. A lot of research is being done at estimating the average cost to businesses and trying to estimate the reputational damage done to businesses. And typically how you do that is you grab a list of companies that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ that have announced cyber attacks that have penetrated their systems, and you try and work out how much their stock price falls. And the stock price is a measure of the value of the company, and the fall is a measure of the total damage done, according to the market, to the business as a consequence of the cyber attack. Conventionally, most studies have looked at, the day before an announcement, how much does the stock price fall from the day before to the day after it announces it's been cyber breached. And the figure that they come up with is about 1% of the value of which doesn't sound like much. But if you apply that to Disney, a few years ago it was cyber attacked, worth $200 billion US dollars. That's $2 billion. That's not 4.5 million, that's 2 billion. So the damage is enormous, but we thought, no, there's more to this story as well. The other really significant problem we recognized is the average company listed on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ takes on average, almost 1 year to find out that it's been cyber breached. So there's companies that are operating, banks, etc., today, and we won't know they've been cyber breached till next year. We won't know. They won't know they've been breached. So I view that as one of the most significant technical problems that we face. Companies have cyber criminals playing in their systems, stealing data, and they don't even know about it yet, and they won't know for 12 months. The other thing we know about cyber attacks and cyber criminals is they love two sectors. One, finance. That's where the money is. Go rob a bank. Well, that's what they're doing. And also, they love service sectors. Why service sectors? Lots of individual data, lots of identity data. They love identity theft. Go to where there's lots of individual information. So the service sector is also a sector they like to attack. So what we did at Florida Poly was we decided that if it takes a company a year to find out that it's been cyber breached, and once it's cyber breached, it's too busy trying to deal with the problem to tell anyone about it. I mean, it's trying to work out the size of the problem. Let's close off our systems. Let's deal with our customers. Let's stop them running away. They're going to take an inordinate amount of time to tell the market, tell the media to publish that they've been cyber breached. So it seemed to us that there's a lot of opportunity for information about cyber attacks to leak out over potentially a year before the company announces, hey everyone, we've been cyber attacked. So we thought, if you take that into account, is it really just 1% of the value of the firm that's damaged? What about all the information that's leaked? So we redid all the previous studies. There were about 40 of them. We redid all those studies, and we found out that that the damage done is 5 times what was previously thought. So 5% is the damage wreaked on companies who announce they've been cyber breached if you measure it properly. So we're not talking about Disney suffering a $2 billion problem, but it's a $10 billion problem. And guess what? The out-of-pocket costs are probably only $4.5 million. The other thing that we looked at, and that's really topical in the United States at the moment, is when you tell people. When do you tell the market? When do you announce you've been cyber breached? The SEC in the United States wants to introduce a 4-day rule. You find out you've been cyber breached, you have to tell the market 4 days later to keep, transparency, to keep everyone in the know. So we were fortunate enough to have a sample of data where we knew when the company detected it was breached and when it told the market. And the delay in telling the market from when it's detected is 55 days, 2 months. So it takes the company a year to find out it's been cyber breached, and then on average it takes the company 55 days to tell the market. That's a huge problem. And the SEC would like that to be 4 days at most. So if I sit back and I think about what are the 2 biggest problems from a policy perspective in terms of cyber security, I think one is we've got to do a better job at detection. A year is just crazy. And secondly, the transparency is really important. So if the stock price falls 5% on average when a company announces it's been cyber attacked, and the company takes 2 to 3 months to tell the market, anyone who's buying shares in that company is overpaying. So they're getting ripped off. So the transparency issue is one that's very significant and important. So I'll stop there with that short comment at the moment, and then maybe we can pick up a couple of other issues.
Wow, that definitely not only is concerning, but generates a lot more questions, which I think we'll get to right after our third speaker. So our third speaker, who we already know, went to university for a year in Paris together with Tariq. It's really nice to meet you in person. Rita Lakari, who is, as of January, will be opening up your own new center here at the university, which I hear we will be listening to more about. One of the fascinating things is that you're still sort of doing your job at the University of Paris Dauphine, at l'ASMADE, is that right? You've been a professor at École Polytechnique and also an honorary professor at University of Liverpool, but you've been joining here at this university since about June or a few months ago. You are a professor in research, game theory, social choice, economic theory, optimization, learning, operations, and also you have a PhD in mathematics, super basic. And beyond that, you also published, here's another Fulbright connection, alongside Michael Belinsky, who is the father of our current executive director, Maria in the UK. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe the more technical side. I know that you have some slides that you'd like to show us. So again, we went from big, broader, strategic to more policy-oriented, and now the technical part. You promised not to put anyone asleep because we're already in the afternoon session. So take it away, Rita. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for this invitation. So I'm here. So today we're speaking how to bring Moroccan to Morocco. So I was in Morocco until 20 years old. So I did Lycée Khawarizmi, then Mohamed V, class préparatoire. Then I was at the École Polytechnique in France. Then I was at the CNRS as a researcher for 20 years. And now I'm coming back to my country to build a new laboratory, Moroccan Center for Game Theory. So we asked me to do a talk about cybersecurity. I'm not specialist of cybersecurity, so it's when you hear cybersecurity and you're academics, you think to computer science. So of course, it's very important, and it's a topic of computer science, and there will be, of course, a collaboration, hopefully, between the laboratoire, the Center of Game Theory, and the one of computer science, because game theory has a lot to say about cybersecurity. So just to give us, I'm going to do a little bit of advertisement to the lab, to this Moroccan center. So the main objective of this center is to train PhD students in mathematics, economics, and computer science, which are the three fields on which I'm working. In fact, game theory is a multidisciplinary field that has to do with rational decision making, but with several agents. In cybersecurity, when you are designing a system, you have in front of you an attacker, you know, and you would like to anticipate everything this attacker may do to attack you, and then you should have measures to counter-attack. You should detect. So there is a lot of strategic issues and decisions that you should do, and also you have not a lot of resources to in your disposal, and you should choose to evaluate the risk for every decision you do, and then take the optimal decision depending on the type of attacks you could have. So that's what it has to do with game theory. But game theory, if you know a little bit, so started at Princeton, but before that it started in France with Émile Borel, who wrote an article in 1921, and I was organizing 100th birthday of Borel in Switzerland, in Sweden, with several Nobel laureates that were invited, because then game theory becomes a field in economics and mathematics. And many Nobel laureates, like John Nash, for example, but many others, worked on game theory. So it has to do with economics, and in particular, institution design, study of oligopoly, auctions. It has also to do with bargaining, competition between states, and this is political science. It has to do with the learning, multi-agent learning, which is related to this, our topic today, because when you want to learn about attacks, you are doing adversarial learning, and that's one of the applications of game theory to cyber security. So I would like also to advertise that we will have, we will start this PhD program in 1 year, 2024. So if there are any master students here doing some mathematics or computer science, he may be interested by applying to this PhD program.
And then they could take a Fulbright to America to do PhD research in game theory as well?
Yes, for sure. Okay, so as I said, game theory has several applications in economics, international relations, biology. So evolutionary biology. So they are using game theory for different perspectives. One of them is cooperation among animals. Hawk-dove game, very known game. There is also, if you want to competition between species, or if you have a new gene or mutation of gene and you would like to know if you will survive or not, compared to others. So you have dynamics, you have dynamical systems here, and that's really a very fascinating topic. Biology and evolutionary biology. Sociology, evolution of norms and cooperation, trust. So this is also fascinating topics on game theory. And now today I'm going to give some examples of computer science applications of game theory, in particular designing attacks resistant or systems that are resist to attacks and that are decentralized. For example. So let me give one example on which I'm working, and I have 2 PhD students working on this. It's about blockchain design. So I don't know if you know about blockchain. It's probably not much, but you heard about Bitcoin, Ethereum. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are decentralized systems. So instead of having a bank in which you are going to write the transactions that you did, that everybody did, and they can compute what is the money you have after doing some transaction and the other transaction, and you cannot pay twice with your money. So if you spend 10 euro to buy, so then you have 10 euro less. So this is done in a centralized bank. When you do in Bitcoin, there is no central bank. There is a branch of computers, okay, many of them, network of computers, and all of them have exactly the same register, and they should register exactly the same set of transactions. And so there are many blockchains existing. The most known are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Each of them has billion dollars value. But you have in France Tezos. I'm working with Tezos, for example. I have a PhD student in Tezos. So they should design rules of how to do it. So Tezos, for example, is a proof of stake. It's called proof of stake blockchain, in which stakeholders, they have with some probability who are going to select some of the stakeholders. He will have the right at that moment when he's selected to be the one who will take the register. He will write his transactions in these registers. Everybody will copy his transactions. He will send them to everybody. And there are people some validators that should validate and they are rewarded for validating. Validation means that they should verify that this register is correct. They should do some computation, which is costly for them. And then they have sequencers. Once there is a set of transactions, they should rank them in some specific orders. Or these people, you should pay them by creating new money. Okay, and this new money, how much you are going to give to everyone. This is something you should design, and you should also be sure that everybody has exactly the same register. And if there is an attack, but no more than 1/3 of people in the system still work well. Okay, if there is an attack on Ethereum, then Ethereum or Bitcoin will lose his value, and it's billions, of dollars. It's a lot, and they invest a lot of money. It's extremely technological. It's used cryptography, many other fields, but in particular a lot of game theory there. So that's one application of game theory. So Sybil attacks is the idea that so this is incentive alignment. You should give incentives for example, validators to validate. One possibility is because what they want to do is free ride. They can claim that they validated and everything is fine, but they didn't do any computation. If everybody do that, then nobody will validate, and they are going to validate invalid blocks. We don't want that. So if everybody is honest, it's fine, but some people are not, don't want to compute and claim that they validate and they take the money, okay? So one way to check this is to sometimes, from time to time, you can send some invalid blocks with some small probability. It's just enough such that if someone doesn't validate, because cost of validation is very small, you can catch this person because he claimed that something is valid, why it is not valid, and that's a way to catch the deviator. So just to give you some how game theory can be helpful there. Governance is also important because once you want to change, you want to change the rule of the blockchain. So Tezos, they changed the rules. They moved from, they already experienced 3 or 4 systems. Each time they should vote, and the votes are of course token based, and you should have the right to vote is proportional to how many tokens you have, and there is also the voting method that will be used, and these kind of things. So this is also something important, using voting. Voting is part of cooperative game theory, so it's one of the topics we are going to have in our PhD program. Sybil attacks is sometimes, imagine that you have a network and you say, okay, let's take a person at random and it will decide. Okay, so in that case, if I am a user, I can just duplicate myself several times, create several email addresses, and I increase my probability of being picked. Okay, so you should counter this. That's why proof of work, proof of stake, proof of burn, proof of reputation. So these are different possibilities of counter-attacking Sybil attacks. Proof of work is used by Bitcoin. You invest in big computers that they do a lot of computation to solve a mathematical puzzle. So this mathematical puzzle takes time. You should just explore some space at random. You don't know where there is a solution. And more you have computers, more you have the chance to find the solution. But you should invest. So if you duplicate yourself in 2, you divide your power by 2, and so you will not increase your chance to win. Okay, so this is proof of work. Proof of stake is that you are a stakeholder, and because you are a stakeholder, we give you the rights by some probability dependent, proportional to your stake. And so if you divide yourself in 2, you divide the stake by 2, and so you will not increase your probability by being picked. And this is exactly the same proof of burn. You burn money, and so if you divide yourself by 2, you are going to burn twice your money. It's not good. So that's how you can incentivize and you can counterattack Sybil attacks. So this is domain that I know well, and this is the unique one from the list I'm going to show where I am a little bit expert. Okay. So the more popular one is intrusion detection system. So you are speaking about this problem, and what are the solutions to detect intrusion in the system. So you have what the computer scientists they constructed some tools called honeypots. So honeypots. So the fact is that honeypots you should place them in the network strategically. So and it's research that you should allocate in the network, and you should move them. So you have this problem of allocating. So imagine that you have a policeman. Airports can be attacked. It can be in Terminal 1 or Terminal 2, and you have only one police unit. This police unit, if you put it always in Terminal 1, then attacker will go to Terminal 2. If you put it always in Terminal 2, attacker will go to Terminal 1. So this means that you should do it. It should be unpredictable. You should put it in with some probability in 1 or 2. If Terminal 1 is much more important than Terminal 2, much bigger, then you should do the check. Patrolling should be with higher probability in Terminal 1 than Terminal 2. So that's with this simple problem. You see that the solution is not simple. Okay, so now imagine that you have many honeypots to put in a graph, and you should do it in a dynamic way and learn from your past experience, knowing that the attacker, you will have some honeypots gives you some information about the attacker. Given this information, you should update your strategy and so on. Stochastic alerts is once you discover that you have an intrusion, when you reveal it. So the last discussion is if you have a value in the market, of course you want to delay revelation. This is one aspect. Another aspect is that the moment if you reveal immediately, the attacker knows that you are, for example, you detect that someone tried to enter. You should immediately show that you know that, so he will change his strategy, or you can try to know who is this attacker before revealing or before even letting him know that you know. So you should hide to the attacker that you know that he's trying to attack. That's also one of the strategies you should do. Incentivizing reporting, that's also important. It's something you can reward. For example, if there is a security incident that someone discovered, so you can have incentives to reward people that discover that. You can, if someone is participating to some attack, and you can just, the whistleblower protection policy that you can have, and that they use, for example, in collusion in Europe or in France, if you participate to collusion, and you reveal it to the authorities, you are discharged. The others are not. This is exactly 90% of discovery, 90% in France it's really reporting by whistleblower that implies condemnation by the.
It almost sounds like a video game. It almost does.
Yeah. So vulnerability patching. So once you know that you discover a flaw, you would like to update your system to counter this. Like I said before, you have this trade-off between immediate reparation, immediate patching, or delaying to have more information from the attacker. You can randomize the moment you are going to update. You can also simulate collaboration. This is something you can do all the time. If you have many people that share the same problem, for example, in terrorism, all countries share the information, and this information is helpful to stop attacks. And this applies to any problem where you may have attackers. So investment. So here we have some economy. Cybersecurity investments, strategic allocations. So you have a limited resource, you would like to invest it strategically, okay? But then you should evaluate what is the impact of each. So where are the important? What is the important airport? This one or this one? How much it is important, and how many? What is the probability by which I should choose this one and not this one? So this goes with strategic allocation. Tit for tat is very famous strategy in game theory. So here the idea is that if I know that Russia increase the investment, the money to attack other countries, I should increase my money to match. And so I will keep always the cost higher and higher. So it's a way to if you invest more on this, I will invest more. If you have more nuclear bomb, I will have more nuclear bomb. So it's escalation. So if you do this game like this, some moments the other one will even not try to start, but to begin with. So this is a good strategy somehow in terms of policy. We are speaking about policy. And of course, hiding information is important. Should I reveal what is what do I have as information, and what cybersecurity investments I have? So of course here, since it's a zero-sum game between you and the attacker, the less information you reveal, the better it is. This is known in game theory. So you should not give information unless its information can help you. Okay. So sometimes you can give false information. There is a flaw. You publish the flaw, and someone come and try to use it, and then you will have some information. Okay. But this is strategic use of information. Machine learning. So machine learning, there is a branch of machine learning that I will put as adversarial machine learning. So for example, when we train data, you should train it by taking into account that you should have adversarial examples. This is how we call it in the data, to train it against adversaries. For example, if I want to classify images, so if I know what classifier you use, I can just perturb my image a little bit, and instead of a dog, you will tell me it's a cat, and it's a dog. So so you should.
It was a cat.
It was.
Definitely a cat.
What I mean is that you should train your data in such a way that you can, even by perturbing images, you still do the classification well. So this is called robust adversarial learning. GANs is generative adversarial network. So we were speaking about generative AI. So GANs is a very, very famous algorithm using game theory. You have a generator, you have a discriminator, they compete one against the other. And the idea is that the idea is to train a generator to generate images that looks like real images. And this is the best way to generate real fake images that are completely you know, now we can, if you ask your ChatGPT, give me some image, he will generate an image which is using this GAN algorithm. GAN can also create adversarial example that you can use in your training in the first place. So this is a very nice tool to use in game theory that can be used in machine learning. And of course, randomization is also, I can have, when I have an algorithm of classification, my algorithm can change over time. I can change randomly. So, so I can have a branch of good algorithms because there is not only one good algorithm to classify. There are many that are all very good. But if I use one deterministically and the others learn this one, they will beat me. They can use it against me. So I can just choose one of each day. I choose one at random, and I change every day. I can still classify well, but I will be prevented against attacks. Okay. So there are lots of conferences combining game theory and cybersecurity. For GameSec, it's 13 years. It has been 13 years that this conference exists. And I will perhaps, I think it's my last slide. So thank you very much, and I welcome any questions.
That was amazing that a cat actually walked across the stage right as you talked about cats. That was amazing. All right, well, I have a couple of questions for you, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for, I am sure, some very spicy questions. So we will be counting on you in just a moment. First, Alex, so I know that your Fulbright research was kind of focused on the estimation of costs during these cyber attacks. I know you talked a little bit about your research findings, maybe you could elaborate on it, but also talking a little bit about how much a business could or should spend on cybersecurity, sort of, you know, how long is this piece of string go?
So I think that that issue has probably been answered by other researchers. We know that the more you spend on cybersecurity, the more you invest in it, the less will be the chance of being cyber penetrated and the costs associated with cyber. But beyond a certain point, you'll be investing a lot of money for very little gain. So there is a sweet spot. And the issue is for a company to find that sweet spot. So 5% is the damage to the business done from a cyber attack. Then that'll almost gives you an indication of, you know, the upper amount that you could be spending on cybersecurity. So it's a interesting policy kind of consideration for companies, and one that I don't think companies have got a good handle on. The other thing, I really enjoyed your point about hiding information. Yep. So regulators in the United States, they don't want that kind of information, how much you spend on cybersecurity, to be hidden. They want companies to tell the market. Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, well, maybe that's good for the market, but if I'm a cyber criminal, imagine having a list of companies and knowing which ones didn't spend much money on cybersecurity. Boom! So it's an interesting kind of point.
I can tell you that it's known. For example, when you find a mistake, when you find something and you publish it, it takes 2 months after it's solved. So most of the attacks are because of published flaws, and it gives time to the attacker to attack. And sometimes you should be careful before publishing. You should perhaps solve it before, and this is important to know what is the optimal timing before I publish, that I know that there is an attack.
So I'm thinking a 4-day rule. You tell the world we've been cyber attacked, every criminal out there will be hitting that same company saying, whoa, there's a, you know. Interesting, yeah.
Well, I wanted to go back to your original part of your presentation, which was about blockchain. And so can you tell us a little about what would be a good design of blockchain, how could this support cybersecurity?
So the first thing is to remark that Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. What is proof of work? Proof of work is a lot of energy spending, and in China, in Russia, in other countries. So they have a lot of investment on machine calculating to be do one. So if I win, if I win the right to build the block, you know, in Bitcoin, it's $500,000. $500,000. The win. Imagine it's a lot of money, but it's a lot of spending of energy. Proof of stake and proof of burn, so there are other systems that are less energy consuming, but they have other security issues. Because what is beautiful about Bitcoin is really the way it is built is completely against a lot of possible attacks, Sybil attacks, double spending. Double spending is the fact that you have, because the network is not completely synchronized. So some people may be using this branch and the other one another branch. You have several branches, and then at some moment you are going to follow the longest one. So it's a way to. So now the ideal system that does not exist in a sense will not exist, because you have some impossibility results. But you have some possibilities, but sometimes, for example, I give an example, which is very nice. It's about if you give stakes proportional you give right proportional to the stake. What do you do in practice? You take 1,000 blocks. You say, okay, you can do it IID. IID is for example, if we are two miners, if one half, it's you, me, you, me, blah blah blah. If you do it like this, then what you do, so this is a randomization, okay? The randomization is done by a computer. How you do it? There are functions that are depending on that if you change something a little bit, it changes completely this function. And this is random, it's kind of, so it's technical stuff. You have cryptography, there's lots of things like that, but there's something very nice, is that if the last one in the block will determine the probability by which we are going to build the next block. And this information depends on the hash of the last block he will publish, and he controls this last block. He can change the transaction he put in this block. He cannot publish this block. And this gives him the probability, the distribution in the next one that he can compute. And sometimes, if I'm not lucky, I should have 10 blocks in average, but I got only 5. If I follow the rules, then I say, okay, then I should not follow the rules. I'm going to cheat and try to find the best combination that gives me 10 right, and even better, perhaps 12 right. Okay, and that's cheating also. And so you have a lot of problems that you discover each time you change something in a system. New things comes, and something about auctions, for example. You have several ways to sell the block, because when you win the block, you are going to put transaction in the block. One way to do it is the highest value wins. So there are bidding, people bid to be in the block, and you take the highest bidders and you put them in the block until the capacity is this is one way to do. Another way that Ethereum are doing is try to determine this fixed price that everybody pay to be in the block, and this price is determined by the past observations, and this price try to clear the markets. It will be like demand and offer, and you clear the market. This is the equilibrium price of the market, which should be so this is another way to do, you see, and so it's fascinating field.
Well, I'm going to make this a little bit more dynamic now, a little bit more interactive, and turn to the audience for any questions, and otherwise we can keep a banter between ourselves, but I'd love to turn to any of you, and if not, I will randomly start calling on Fulbrighters to find some amazing questions, or students here. So for any questions, perfect. And if you don't mind also introducing yourself just to make it more friendly and social. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the talk. It was exciting. And so my name is Ayman. I'm a PhD student in the medical field, but I have background in cybersecurity too. So I have a question, actually, specific one. Like, as you said, the companies need to invest a lot in securing themselves. But sometimes, as the company grow, they have to outsource some of their services to other companies or create partnerships. And this could create an indirect hacking or some problem. So how much is dangerous this risk? And how can we protect ourselves better from getting hit from another route, not directly?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great question. Who would like to take it first?
Yeah, I'll have a go at that one. So So in terms of protecting your data, and you're quite right, many companies are being hit or cyber attacked via third-party suppliers to them. So if you outsource your payroll, the payment of your employees, and that whoever you outsource to has very weak cybersecurity, that makes you vulnerable. So what companies should be doing, I hate to say that, I mean, on its own, assessing how valuable it is. Obviously, credit card information is more valuable than a list of projects that a company's involved in, and you should be investing more in cyber protecting credit card information, identity of employees, etc., than a list of projects that a company's involved in. So theoretically, you need to do this on a data set basis, and in the words of Tarek, perhaps you give up sovereignty over data sets that are not that important, but you never let go of the data that's really valuable to your company, your firm, and your employees.
Sovereignty versus data. What do you think?
I'm a mathematician, so I'm sorry, I will not answer to questions related to companies investing. I never invested, so, but what I would like to emphasize here is you should have. It's always a strategic thinking, always predictions, decision analysis. If I do an action, what is the reaction of, so it's a strategic thinking problem. You should do, when you are first, before doing anything, you should model the problem. What are all possible strategies of the advisory? What are the possible consequences? What are the competitors? If you do a mistake, then you will learn it later, but we do always mistake. That's why you should always update for example, MIT, they used to have a code, 52-digit code for every staff member in the 80s. Now it's recently, 2 years ago, they discover that now you can, in 1 day of computation, you can decode. Okay, so now they change. So you should change. No. So just to say that there is no perfect strategy, because whatever you will do, it will be discovered and you should update. So it implies that you should always be ready and think about what will happen in the future and react to that. And, it's a game, a repeated game. So it's one of the topic of my PhD program. Come to my PhD program.
Aha, another recruitment tool. Other questions or comments or even stories from our audience? Perfect, hello. And if you don't mind introducing yourself too.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I work for OCP Group at the Chairman's Office. On a personal level, we've all come to terms that we live in a sort of post-privacy era. What do you think sets businesses apart in their endeavor of securing and protecting their online data?
What do you think, Alex?
So there's many ways. There's many different ways you can invest in cybersecurity if you're a company. One is you can try and protect your data. Two, you can try and develop systems and processes in case you're penetrated. And three, you can take out insurance to protect your business if the worst comes to fore. I think all those three things are important, but companies that are doing the first, protecting their data sets and doing everything they can to protect their business, is the most important. I was reading in The Guardian on the weekend, the CEO of the Swiss and Spanish stock exchanges, he hires hackers, groups of hackers, to try and break into his exchange systems, reasoning that it's better to have someone I'm paying break into my systems than a cyber criminal in an offshore country. And I think to admit that is stunning, but also I think that should give investors a sense of security by knowing that he's going to extreme lengths to try and protect his system. So I was both horrified, but at the same time thinking, wow, what a clever thing. And it's just a stock exchange CEO. We're not talking about anyone running it's not just a stock exchange CEO. We had one over there, but a stunning admission and great business.
That's right. I had read the same thing. It's Joost Disselhoff, he's a Dutch gentleman who's the CEO of the Swiss-Spanish Stock Exchange, and he indeed told The Guardian last week that he employs hackers to come and develop security for his exchange. So would have been a good question for Tariq as well. Any other questions from the audience or things that you'd like to share? Yes.
Hi, Carlos Umaña from the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Erica, since you said questions or comments, I'm going to make a comment. Cybersecurity is definitely something of increasing concern. There was a case, for instance, when some hackers actually hacked the system of lights for the Empire State Building, and they created an app, and that app ran for several hours. They shared it broadly so people could actually modify the design of the Empire State Building just by that hack. Now, when we're talking about nuclear weapons, the possibility of cyber terrorism is definitely one of the greatest arguments for nuclear disarmament. You can reduce the vulnerability to cyber terrorism, but you can never eliminate it. And thank you for bringing that up. And actually, something that most people are not really aware is how cyber attacks can actually trigger the Article 5 of NATO, that can actually trigger an actual war with NATO countries, an actual war with nuclear weapon states. So it is definitely of concern and a very powerful argument for nuclear disarmament. So thank you for bringing it up.
That's true. We didn't talk about hacking. We didn't talk about elections. We didn't talk about disinformation.
Do you know why it is the case that they have this in NATO? Because Russia have a bomb that can stop all communications, all electricity, everything. If they use it, they can use it. But if they use it, it's NATO tell them it will be act of war. That's the reason why.
Any last questions? Yeah, Fulbrighter. Oh, and also 2. 1 and 2. Whoever gets to someone first. Oh, 3 questions. Great. I don't even see. Perfect. Fulbright. Or do you have a microphone?
Anyway, fire away. So you've got the mic.
Yeah, I think you're the only one who has the microphone.
Can start? Okay. My name is Adnan Zalmat. I'm a member MENA region of International Federation of Global and Green Information Technology. I'm blockchain enthusiast. My question would be about implementing actions in universities. Why not here in this university? To try to bring a blockchain technology applications, real use cases in real estate industry, health industry, and other industry in the society. For example, like MIT and Harvard are doing right now. All their the new diploma is inside the blockchain. You know the case. So it will be very practical that in Africa, inside African universities, it will be a new programs that will implement a blockchain, will help people to know how to implement blockchain technology inside different use cases in the society. And if it can start from the universities, it will be very good, because right now blockchain technology has nothing to prove after 10 years or 11 years of existing. And it will be really something very important and interesting for students and young people that will shape the future. Because right now, you know, blockchain technology, there is Web 3.0, blockchain in 4.0, 5.0, metaverse, artificial intelligence, and we are living right now in a very fast world, and we are living a matching between different sciences, and so on. The speed is making things more complicated, and it will not be easy for students or young people to shape the future if they are not starting from this moment inside this matching of different sciences. Thank you so much.
That was the perfect comment to the perfect person, so that's great. Do you want to comment? And then I think there's someone up there. Perfect.
What I want to say is that one, university, Rachid Gueraoui is not here. He would have been great to have him here because he's one of the chairmen of the builder of the College of Computing inside the university, and he is a big specialist of distributed computing, in particular blockchains. He's professor at École Polytechnique Fédérale of Lausanne, and I think that he has some projects of blockchain in the university, so he told me this, but we should check with him. But clearly, yes, great proposal, one. And secondly, my role here would be to give some insight about some tools, like game theory, that may be useful, but they are far from being enough. It's extremely technological, lots of coding. I don't code, for example. So we have no coding.
Maybe he'll code for you.
Lots of technologies that you should understand and learn to be a good programmer in blockchains.
So a future PhD student for you, I see it. All right, turning to an American Fulbrighter.
Yes, just so you don't have to choose one of us randomly. So the Fulbright question, I guess, since there's been an academic overtone to this whole weekend and the conference, how can academic institutions best shape this cybersecurity mindset for these younger generations of university students? And what strategies do you believe are most effective in preparing these students for such dynamic challenges in this field?
Sure.
Multidisciplinarity. Unique reply. The problem of science in many countries, in France in particular, so everybody's speaking about multidisciplinarity, but at the end, nobody do this multidisciplinarity. You have departments of mathematics, departments of computer science, departments of this, departments of that, but real-life problems, they are not one discipline. They are multidisciplinary. And even if I come from one background, I come from mathematics, for example, but I was forced, because of my work, to go beyond this. And when, if it's in worse, if you are not academic and you go to work in a company, you should understand many topics, and it comes only by multidisciplinarity. So we should. So that's my reply to this.
And more Fulbright projects on cybersecurity, which is a humble plug, but it's true. You just mentioned all the different. You were talking about economics. You were talking about biology, sociology, computer science, all within your own discipline. So that's a lot of tone.
This is why I choose to do game theory.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, hello.
So, hey, my name is Hussam. I do anesthesiology and copywriting.
Wow.
And I just want to say, by the way, great speech and great moderation. So my question is the world is gonna like adapt due to the widespread of the cyber attacks? Is it possible that it's gonna be adapting by choosing Bitcoin or that kind of currency as the main currency for exchange of goods or services, etc.?
Are you shaking your head no, or you don't know the answer?
You can, so any country, for example, the US can tomorrow say Bitcoin are forbidden. No, and then Bitcoin will not exist anymore. So you cannot. So the regulations. So we are in a world. We are in a complex world, in which you have some powerful countries that can make decisions. For example, in the US, dollars. If you trade in dollars, even if you trade outside the US and you have a transaction between two countries that has nothing to do with the US, you can be charged if it's illegal in their point of view.
Only if you get caught.
If you get caught.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But the US they have the big five.
Yeah.
the GAFA, and they know a lot, much more than any other country. So they have a lot of knowledge that they can use, and they use it strategically in a sense. So in terms of it's much more it's more complex than that, I think.
Yeah, your question's very interesting. I have a couple of colleagues in Australia who wrote a paper. I don't know the detail of the paper, but they demonstrate that it's likely that the majority of trading in cryptocurrencies is by criminals. So
Russians.
Well, anyway, so it's an interesting issue, and the broader issue of whether it could ever replace a currency. You're quite right. Countries could ban cryptocurrency as a form of legal tender, but then it's incumbent on them to enforce it, which I think is very difficult. Very difficult. But, yeah, good question.
Well, can I get a round of applause for our two professors and also Tarek, who had to leave early. A special round of applause for our colleague Mustafa, who has organized all of us to be here today, and especially those of us who are speakers. A big round of applause for Mustafa, the quarter. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One last special shout out to the cat that made the appearance on stage for briefly, but yeah, round of applause. So thank you all very much. We wanted to end this just a few moments early so we could set ourselves back on the time track for today, and wish you the great rest of our conference.
Excuse me, don't leave. Can we take a 10 minutes break? 10 minutes break, and then we can resume, so we still have two sessions. One with one session, and then the closing remarks. So please be back within 10 minutes. Thank you. So we're going to start within 1 or 2 minutes, if you don't mind taking your seats back. There's a prize for people who will attend this session. Mr. Ashuban, please. Mr. Ashuban, you're requested. Qahwa Tanja. Ready? Okay, so welcome to this session. Welcome to this session. This panel will talk about the future and the link with science. And I would like to ask our esteemed guests to talk about one thing that I really care about, is love and desire. We are here as human beings, and I think we need to go back to square one, as we say, and we need to find out and to highlight what makes us humans and how we can shape the future by our vision. So we need to promote the ideas for making people want to live together and build a common future. And science and technology could be our best allies and tools. Most of tomorrow's jobs don't exist yet, but our vision of the future can be shaped by our will, fears, and expectations. The future is not something that's being set up on its own. We make the future. Science is not neutral. It's a transposition of how we perceive reality and the future. So we build the future the way we want it to be. There are many events with world-class thinkers, but what is the takeaway message that you will keep with you once everybody's gone home? Will be changed in your minds and your decision-taking process once you've heard all what we've said during these 2 days? My thoughts go to Michel Mayor, who's the Nobel Prize 2019, who was sitting here 2 years ago, and he stated one thing: there is no plan B, there is no planet B. He says that it takes 1 million years to reach, as human beings, the closest exoplanet on which we could establish life, meaning that this is something we cannot achieve in our lifetime. So his message is, let's take care of our beloved Earth, and the future of this planet depends on us. So I hope that our brilliant speakers and their contributions will help us make a better and more inclusive and more equal world. I would like to introduce our speakers. Mr. Taavi Rõivas, the former Prime Minister of Estonia. As you all know, Estonia is one of the pioneers in digital democracy. You can become an e-citizen or e-resident, of Estonia without having to go there. They are the most advanced in this technology of digitalization of the process of becoming a citizen. Mr. Rõivas was the Prime Minister from 2014 to 2016, and he was also the youngest Prime Minister sitting in the European Council. He also was before that the youngest Minister for Social Affairs in Estonia, and today he's a entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur. He will talk about his work and the way he sees the future from his own point of view. Professor Raphaël Liogier, he's the scientific director of the IAS, here within the UM6P. Raphaël Liogier is a French philosopher. He received his PhD in social sciences at the University Paul Cézanne in Marseille. He holds a Master's of Science by research in philosophy from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And he also studied social sciences at Berkeley. He serves as a board member on the scientific journal Social Compass, and he's one of the 12 members of the International Commission for Peace Research at UNESCO. He's been invited as a visiting professor by several universities, and his last adventure so far is his stake at the IAS, and we're counting on him to help us get this label we're looking for. He just published Chaos, that you can find in the library. It's the first of 4 volumes of a reflection that sets new paradigms on transitions, and the IAS is based and centered on transitions. Professor Bruno Gérard is the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Studies within the UM6P. Bruno is a professor of agrobiosciences. That's 3 words in one word. He earned a master's degree in agricultural engineering from the Université Catholique de Louvain. Don't make a mistake, because if I mix everything, it won't work. He also holds a master's degree in irrigation engineering from the Utah State University and PhD in agronomy from the University of Hohenheim. I'm mentioning this because he's worked at the International Crops Research Institute for the semi-arid tropics. He also worked at the International Livestock Research Institute in Ethiopia. And his research and development is centered about the practices to take the agronomy practices and technologies in a more sustainable world with increasing productivity, profitability, resilience, and stability for farming systems. Also, he's focusing on preserving the environment, and he will talk about the way he sees his job in the future and today. Professor Hermann Ulrich is the managing general partner at Einstein Industries Ventures. Dr. Hermann is a mechanical engineer. He started his career at Bertelsmann. I think the young people don't really know Bertelsmann, but it's a brand, a big brand, and they have a think tank that shapes a lot of the ideas that make it through the newspapers around the world. He's also an honorary professor for digital transformation and digital leadership in I'm sorry for the pronunciation, Allensbach Hochschule Konstanz. And Dr. Hermann is also an executive in the information solutions, and he's been working on disruptive changes. He will talk about 2 different fields and how these fields interact, although it's not something that's given when you mention the 2 fields separately. Professor Eva Bilabel is the Space Office Director for the Spanish Space Agency in Spain. She began her career at the Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias, and her work was awarded the prize for the best doctoral thesis in astronomy by the Spanish Society for Astronomy. She worked at NASA, at the Hubble Space Telescope, and thank you, Marta, for the beautiful pictures you've shared with us this morning. Thanks to you, we went through a nice trip. So Eva was hired by the European Space Agency, and she's currently working as a research scientist at the Astrobiology Center in Spain, where she teaches. So I would like, if you don't mind, we'll try to keep the time frame. So each of the guests will have 10 minutes to share their views, and then we'll have a session as we had during these 3.5 days. And I hope that by the end of this session, you'll see you'll be even more optimistic about how science can help change the world in a better way. So, Mr. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for such a kind introduction. And I think it should be reasonable to let you know what the future will bring, and 10 minutes is more or less enough for that. So no worries, we will manage. First of all, let me start with let me focus on the topic of technology, just to narrow things down a little bit and fit to this 10-minute time frame, which I think is very reasonable. And secondly, let me start with one very good thought that I heard from the same stage here yesterday. And it goes like that. Change does not always make things better, but in order to make things better, we need change. And innovation, all of innovation, of course, is change. And we wouldn't be human beings if we wouldn't be somewhat, at least, afraid of change. So it's very human to cling on to status quo and because we don't know what change brings necessarily, and if it will make things better, we are a little bit afraid of that. What's the solution? I think both in academia, in politics, in business, if you can understand what is ahead of you, what trends are there, what mega trends are influencing the next years or next decades, it's almost easy to cope with them. Things like technological development, climate change, if you look at the large scale, they might be terrifying because they are huge things. But if you take them down to bits and pieces, actually it makes much more sense. And we are in very, very good place to trying to demystify things, because that's exactly what academia is doing. Okay, let's just start with trying to understand what future will bring in technology. And in order to do so, let's just turn back the time just a little bit. Let's say 2.5 million years. Why? Just to remember that the development of technology used to be super slow. There were whole ages named after basically single tool. Stone Age, if I'm not mistaken, was like 2 million years, give or take. Then we had Bronze Age, which was 1,300 years. Then 6 centuries of Iron Age. Okay, fast forward a little bit, Industrial Revolution, again, give or take, let's say 8 decades. Huge pace compared to what it used to be. And now, again, fast forward, we are at the 4th Industrial Revolution, or development of, let's say, ICT or information technology, and things are happening super fast. Okay, let's just bring one example. There are also students in the room, so I would just, even though I was the youngest when I was in politics, now I'm relatively old. So in my childhood, I had a dream. That was, let's say, 32 years ago. I had a dream that once I will have portable television that I can take to beach with me. Why to beach? Don't ask. That I was a kid, so I didn't have many rational dreams necessarily. And that seemed to me like a super distant future that was probably not possible, or if I grew up, maybe this is possible. And actually what turned out 3 decades later is that probably each and every one of us have not only portable TV that you can take to beach or Morocco or wherever with you, you also have a camera, you also have video camera here, you have a cassette player, gramophone, mailman, fax machine. Yeah, most of you who are students probably don't understand what I'm talking about, saying about fax machines and mailmans, but yeah, they're all in here. And yeah, actually, I have 3 kids. If we tell them hang up the phone, they really don't understand what we are talking about. But some of you in the audience still remember. And this device, why I'm telling about that, this is give or take 16 years old device. Smartphones as such, I think iPhone was basically the one to revolutionize. And this has changed not only how we communicate, but basically it has given a huge impact to all of economy. And all of those technological developments, of course, have done that. So I think the main conclusion in understanding that is that each and every big innovation since the Stone Age, since the Industrial Revolution, and especially with information technology, has changed dramatically how we work, how we do business, And the mankind has always had somewhat of a struggle to cope with this. And it seems to me that most times we are struggling because we still want to cling on to status quo. There are, like, let's say, for example, labor laws that still take us from 8 to 5, still take us to factory work, whereas a lot of jobs actually have changed and don't necessarily need this kind of time frame. There are a lot of countries who don't like to have new business models, be it sharing economy, be it gig economy, be it whatever, from Ubers to Airbnbs. Not all countries are equally interested in making them happen. And I think that's in principle not the good approach, because technological development, and now I'm starting to, after this long introduction, starting to tell what will happen in the future. The technological development is continuing at increasing pace. I don't think there is any possibility to slow that down or prohibit from happening. And that means if you as a country, if you as a company, if you as an individual want to cope with that, or not only cope, but get the most out of that, it makes sense to actually be prepared. And if you're a regulator, then enable it. If you are a company, plan your business model accordingly. Now let's think what kind of angles we are getting. In addition to technological development in the near future that is linked with ICT, of course, one topic that has continuously been mentioned on this stage yesterday and today is artificial intelligence. Again, something that probably most of mankind is afraid. But if you, again, take it to bits and pieces, it's nothing really very complicated. It's image recognition is AI as in itself. Of course, it's complicated technology, but nothing mysterious. Voice synthesis is AI. Again, playing chess was one example, which essentially, as much I understand, is just a lot of calculations in a row. What kind of moves will lead to what kind of conclusions? So again, it's not impossible to teach a computer to play not only better than human, but play basically almost ideal chess. Things that get a little bit more complicated perhaps when we talk about generative AI and where that might take us. But still, I don't think there is any opportunities or possibilities to deregulate it or regulate it from happening, because if you try to regulate it and prohibit here in Morocco, it will happen in the neighboring countries. If we try to regulate it in Europe, it will happen in US and so forth. So and again, like regulating technology, I think it's like rather short-sighted in most cases, because you cannot regulate progress from happening. You can just regulate yourself away from progress and be slower to adopting that. And initially also, we spoke in the introduction about Estonian e-government. E-government is also nothing mysterious. It's just using the tools that we have today, the best tools that we have to provide public services. And I would argue that best tools today are not papers. Best tool today to give your signature is not this, Stone Age tool. Best tool to give your signature is encrypted key that you can do with this or perhaps your laptop, because we are in 21st century and signing with this 3 X's or however we do it is not just safe enough anymore. And yeah, I conclude with this thought that basically there is no mystique about the most of what technology or the future of technology will bring to us. We just need to see the trends that have already started and try as well as possible to extrapolate them to the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll go back to the questions after all the guests have spoken. Mr. Raphael Yogier.
Thank you. I'm very careful about words, because I think words are secretly, meaning things that they don't mean at first sight when we read them very quickly. And when I read the title of those three, we could say heterogeneous problems, that is climate protection, job creation, and maintaining prosperity, I would say the first thing I could see, it is that there are two of the expression that are very negative. They say climate protection. It's very negative because that means you can't do better. You want to protect, what does that even mean? You want to protect yourself against climate? You want to be just protectionist of the climate, just maintaining what it is? So that refers to the lack of a positive view, I think. And when you look maintaining prosperity, what does that mean? Like prosperity is a machine and it's actually a maintenance that you are doing, like maintain it the way it is. We forgot about our dream that is actually to grow. I know that since the 50s we are talking about stopping growth, but maybe instead of saying that we need to stop growing, which is actually an obsession of human beings since the Neolithic, we might have to think better about growing in another way, but not saying we have to stop growing. Our problem is that we haven't found yet another way to grow. And the only positive expression is job creation, except that, in my opinion, it is the most absurd expression in all the history of the 20th century. Because what does that even mean, to create a job? And what does that even mean to think that the fact that there are less jobs is a problem? I don't think it's a problem. In my opinion, it's the solution. But the real problem is, what are we doing when we actually say that we are working? What is it? We are creating something that is worth it. So what is important is what is worth, what you are actually doing. And since, again, the Neolithic, the obsession of human being is actually to try to make more worth with less effort, with less labor. So just imagine 1 second, what I call the alien gaze, like the gaze of an alien civilization, looking at us historically, and to see what are those humans from, you said, we could say about 800,000 years, you say 2.5 million, but it's just when humans were really like hominidae, you know, but they are trying with technology, with techniques, to just do things, to produce things with less effort, less train, etc., etc. And at one moment in history, they said, shit, we don't have enough things to do. We produce too much with less effort, that's awful. They will say, what are they talking about? What are they doing? What is their problem? They have a psychological problem in this civilization that we call human civilization, right? So I think when we are talking, and now I will enter into and specify about what I mean by that and solutions, etc., hypothesis. We're talking about job creation, and on the other way, when we are being scared about losing our jobs, like if it were the meaning of our life, well, it wasn't the meaning of our life, it has never been that, right? And it's interesting because it refers to a series of other fears that we have. The fear of technology with what I call the Terminator paradigm. Like, he's not only going to steal our job, he's going to take us, to destroy us, and technology is going to just finish with us. Really, it's not understanding what is actually artificial intelligence to think that this hypothesis Terminator could happen. It doesn't work that way. Technology, there are bad things that could happen. But technology, and in particular, artificial intelligence, is not, it's not something that could decide by itself if we don't program it to do it. Even if it is an open program, even if it is a very sophisticated algorithm, of course, it could be programmed to do that by humans. So the very problem is it's a tool that could be a very dangerous tool, but it will be our fault. It's like any tool, it's like any medicine. You know, there is this word in Greece that we call pharmakon, that means actually medicine, but also means poison. It depends the use, and it depends the amount you use. And I think technology is just that. So it's just our responsibility. So when we talk about job, and problem about job, and when we talk about machine replacing jobs, in fact, we are talking about different things that are completely different. And we ask the bad question. I've looked at it, it's 5 minutes. No, I thought it was, okay. First, we have to distinguish what is task. The task is not a job, it's a task inside a job. Profession, activity, job, labor, you know? And every time, it's different. When you are talking about the labor part, that means it's something that you don't really want to do. That's the reason why that's the reason why it's called labor, because it's the fact that you are like an animal on the ground trying to get something to eat, so that's just the survival part. The thing that you're obliged to do, that you have to do, you can't do otherwise. You know, it's the reason why you have, in English, for instance, you have labor and you have work. You know, when an artist talks about what he's actually doing, he's saying, it's my work, he doesn't say, it's my labor. Or maybe he says the labor is when he has to clean the room after he has made his paintings. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the robot can't clean the room, right? So when we're talking about labor, we are not talking about activity. Activity is the fact that you are not reactive, you are active, like you do something out of your desire to do something, so you're really active. It's not something you're obliged to do. You know? So you have people that are hyperactive, but they just can't help it. They do it all the time. They can't help doing it, and they want to do it, and they want to do it more. You know? And so you have the job. The job is what? The job is the contract. It's the legal thing. Like you have a job or you don't have a job. And so we created some kind of a moral of jobs, like even a religion of jobs. So you have a number of people that have jobs and you have people that don't have jobs, like if they were living in a different universe and are very different. You know, they're black and white, job and not job, jobless and job, right? And it's interesting because it became an identity. So it became a way to exist in the world. So when we are saying we don't have enough job, in fact, what we are saying is we don't have enough meaning. But we don't know how to create meaning otherwise than with the jobs. You know? That's actually what it means when we are saying that. Because when we are now saying profession etymologically, that means, like in German you have Beruf, that means it's vocation in French. Vocation, it's really something you project to do, like when you are young and you ask your kid what you want to do, and you even say, what do you want to be? And he said, oh, I want to be a cosmonaut, an astronaut. Some of them will say a banker or a politician or something, I don't know. You know? So that's really something they projected, and they really desire to be, what I call the desire to be. That is not the desire to survive. That is not the desire for comfort that I call to survive better or the desire to live. It's more than that. It's the desire to be that is directly related to the desire to become someone. What does that even mean? Become someone. So someone different, someone that can tell his own story. So when we are talking about artificial intelligence, and people say, what kind of jobs will disappear? What kind of job will stay? That doesn't mean anything. I mean, in fact, all the jobs will be impacted. Even when some people say, no, when it is human care, it will not be impacted. On the contrary, it will be impacted more. Why? Because with human care, for instance, if you have a nurse that is supposed to stay near someone that has a little disease in front of this person, the regular human being, maybe at one time or another, he will be bored, yes, and he will be a little bit careless because he's not a programmed machine, and he will feel maybe he will sleep, you know. But if he's a machine, maybe a machine, a very sophisticated machine, will be able subjectively, it's what I call subjectivation of objects, which is the next generation of machines, will be even able more to be, to have better care. Or you can say even a policeman. Now the problem with a policeman is that because he has so much ego, because he's still a human, and it's good for creation to have an ego, but in another way when you're in the street, if your ego is touched right in, you could become violent, while the machine, opposite to Terminator, will actually not become violent because will react the way it has to be react. So, basically, in fact, even what is care for the people, human care, will be impacted. Everything. The lawyers will be impacted because to choose between one decision and another, the machine will be able to do it better. So all the profession will be, it's not one profession that will disappear. But what will disappear is different. What will disappear is the tasks, the different tasks inside the profession or inside an activity. So the question we have to ask is not what job will disappear, what, etc., no, it's what tasks will be accomplished by the machine inside every job. And that's the reason why now we have a problem, and I will finish. We have a problem when we think everything in terms of time of work, of time of job. Because the task is actually the time. So that means we will have all the jobs, all the professions that exist today, but they will be very different because they will not need the time we actually use now. And our conception of time and work and place of work, we have seen that with coronavirus, will completely change. And if we don't address that, but if we don't address that in a systemic way, we are not going to be able to change our society to adapt, I think. I had some hypotheses to expose, but it's too, obviously, too many.
Merci, Raphaël.
Yes.
Bruno.
Thank you, Sad. I will bring a totally different perspective. I joined the university after working 30 years in development, in research for development, most of it in Africa. And I joined the university because I knew that the mandate of this university was to serve Morocco and to serve Africa, and in the domain of agriculture. To understand or to look at our future, we need to understand the present and the past. And I think the state of agriculture in Africa is not great. The poverty in Africa is dominant. There are many drivers of change that are increasing the problems in Africa. We take climate change. Africa is emitting 2 to 3% of the greenhouse gas emissions globally, but it's paying the stronger price in terms of climate change. So we're talking about social justice here, global social justice. I believe that agriculture in Africa will need to have drastic transformation. You have to realize that most food produced in Africa is subsistence. It's food consumed by the people cultivating the land. It's not commercial. There's no value addition, almost no value addition. We are talking about labor. African farmers usually are not mechanized. Women and children are doing very tough jobs in the field. Most of the time, it's not to harvest much. There is potential for agriculture in Africa. You probably know that Africa, rain-fed agriculture in Africa is currently producing 30 to 40% of what it could produce. It's called the yield gap. What do we need to fill the yield gap? We need investment. We need policies. We need commitment. We need alignment of development aid. We need a multi-sectoral approach as well. Because agriculture will not save Africa from poverty. It will help to develop Africa, but Africa will need to develop a secondary and tertiary sector. It will need public and private investment, more than what we see today. Most of the private businesses are risk averse and are not investing in Africa because the environment, there is no enabling environment because of political instability, poor governance. So we have to break down that vicious circle that, agriculture can start contributing to the development of the continent and transforming. So coming to technologies, technologies in a vacuum don't do any good. You can talk cell phones and so on. If you don't have innovations that are social, financial, and institutional, your technological innovations will not be at use. We are very lucky in some countries that those things seem so obvious. It's not like that for African farmers or for African population. It's totally different. So I think one thing that we need to do for Africa is to align the investments, in agriculture, in businesses, in the environment, in economics. Most countries still work with ministries that are doing things separately. They have their own strategies. And I think a multi-sectoral approach needs to break down those silos between sectors. The energy sector is another one. So I think, and it's not easy. My training is agronomist, but all my research was systemic research, because everything is connected. You think you do good on something, if you don't look at the other aspects, you may do bad. So there are a lot of trade-offs in development. And the research can help in understanding that. If you want to solve a problem, you need to understand the problem first. And I think sometimes we are jumping that step. I see people saying, well, drones are fantastic for Africa. It will solve everything. Oh, cell phones are fantastic. You need a lot of engineering behind that. And you need people to be trained. So training, education. If you look at the investment in education, higher education in Africa, it's miserable. Who will drive the revolution in Africa? Africans. So they need to be trained. And if we don't do that, you will see that the problem will not be solved. And the cost of not investing in that is much higher than it would cost to do it right. So that's something we have to start looking at, because migration's a major problem. And I don't think it's fun for Africans to migrate. I mean, there are some Africans in Morocco, sub-Saharan Africans in Morocco, in Europe. Those people are usually don't do that because they want to live in Europe, or they want to live in Morocco, or they want to live somewhere else. They are economical refugees, and they usually send most of their salaries to their country. They do that to save their family. Talking about population, you know that population in Africa today is 1.4 billion. By 2050, it will be 2.5 billion. So the food security is a major issue. I mean, there are famines right now in Africa. I mean, if you look at drought in the Horn of Africa. So there are solutions. We can do it, but we need to invest enough in an intelligent manner. And I think that's why we need to train people. We need to train people to understand better the problems. We need to train people to bring good governance. We need to bring stability, political stability in those countries. And it's not the case in many countries right now in Africa. So we understand the problems, I think. We probably have the solutions, but we'll be able to implement the solutions when some key things will be solved, and when investment will be large enough. I'm talking about investments by the development banks, African Development Bank, World Bank, all the aid agencies. They have all their own little program. I don't think there is a master plan. You probably remember, if you are older, that the Marshall Plan after World War II was a major, major boost to the economy. But it was coordinated. It was thought. It was strategic. And I don't see enough strategic investment in Africa right now. And once you do that, you'll attract also private sector investment. Because right now, most private sector is too afraid to invest in Africa. Did I talk enough? Because job creation is there. I mean, there are job opportunities. Value addition, transformation of agricultural products will create added value and will create more wealth. One thing that we have to know is that with the current farm size in Africa, it will not be able to lift everybody, rural population, above the poverty line. No? So we need to have job creation in other sectors as well. I think that's it. I hope I was not too pessimistic. Sad said, well, don't tell bad things.
We need to bring optimism and
no, but I think we can do it. We can do it with the right investment and the right
I'm sure we can do it. We're not just dreaming. And thank you, Bruno. Mr. Ulrich, Dr. if you...
Yeah. So, thank you. I think I had three very important speakers before. One focusing on the software and the disruptions in the digital economy. Then we were looking into the future of work, which is coming with the next disruption based on AI. And the third key thing is the utilization of resources, because the population is growing, continue to grow, and we're sitting still on the same resources, so we have to make a better productive use. And I'm an investor focused on space technology, and that is something what would not have been existing. I would not have sitting here, or my species, 5 years ago or so. There was not such an investor who's investing in space. And it is quite astonishing also to have a presentation from an astronaut in an environment here, which also wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago, that people start to be again interested in space. And you will see this more and more often in the future. And on my left side, we will hear now insights from the Space Agency in Spain. So what is this all about, that we are now looking into space as one of the key solutions to all the issues that we have listened to? Because there is a perspective which is coming, which is the Internet of Things, which is the era where industries are confronted with today. And I'm not here in my role as an investor of Einstein Industries Ventures, the venture fund. I'm here actually as the chairman of the board of the European Charlemagne Prize. Excuse me if I take on my European glasses, because in Europe we see big challenges in front of us, as the industries that we have were quite innovative, are now all challenged to transform their business model into the digital future, and are heavily under attack from China, US, and based on technological developments, on IT developments, that Europe was not taking the lead in the last 10 years, actually. So also this place, if I look into universities, in order to cope or produce students that will go into business after university, we have to teach very different things. We teach things today in curriculum that you may look up, not in Google, but in ChatGPT, and it's meaningless sometimes to learn this stuff or produce papers that you can do very quickly with ChatGPT in 3 minutes and then present it. So what's the reason for this? You have to change the way to teach students on future things, because the future is coming earlier than it used to come in the past. Once you finish your studies after 2, 3, 4 years, then you are in your future already. So for me, it's very important that science and education gets very close. So education needs to be produce a curriculum which is very close to science, which usually looks into the future. I'm primarily concerned on the next industries that are coming, and let me focus on what is happening with space. There was one thing that was, I loved Marsha Su, the astronaut, showing what it is all about with space. Everyone seeing the picture say, wow, this is really a place to be, and I also want to look into on Earth and what's next to humans. So that is what driving us, our species. But what you have seen is the technology which is from an analog world, and it is a surprise actually how this could happen, that we can fly to the moon actually in the 60s. Now we are coming back to the moon, but the technology we will use to go to the moon is very different. It is a result from software entrepreneurs, and also what we should stress a little more is the phenomena which you have seen under SpaceX. You have seen the picture of the cockpit. It looks very different, but it is not the same as what you have seen from Space Shuttle. It is a very clean cockpit because it's a software-defined vehicle, what Elon Musk has done. So reduce everything what is mechanical, replace it with software. And that is what is happening to all the product-producing industry. And what he did is he took two industries, the car industry and the space industry, where he replaces the mechanical and electronical product with a software-defined product. And why is he doing this? Because the things are now connected to the internet. And how to connect the thing to the internet is you first have to define the software, the digital twin of the thing, and the digital twin you can connect with other digital twins. And they then can start to communicate. And what they then receive is artificial intelligence, so the things get more and more autonomous. The best example is the car industry, struggling in Europe dramatically to move into the next business model. They're still developing cars as material products. And the competitors from China and the US, they develop the cars very differently. They develop the cars from a software point of view, and with the perspective to have autonomous cars. So that exactly, the digital, the Internet of Things economy, the economy of things that is coming, is the perspective of all the problems, the resource problems that we were mentioning here. Because we are not able to manage products that we produce under a maximum utilization. You see this with the car industry. The car industry is producing revenue with selling more cars. So if you have one car, the promotion comes and says buy a second car. And then once you have the second car and you have enough income, they ask you to buy a third car. So what is the utilization of the trillion cars that are sold worldwide? They're all standing around. We call it standing traffic. 95% of the cars sold is not utilized. Only 5% of the capacity that has been produced is utilized. 5%. 95% underutilization. And if that would scale further to all the 8 billion people population that we have, you can't take all the resources from Earth. The same thing with food. How many things you throw away? That's because we are unable to understand utilization. And that is what changes with the Internet of Things. Things get connected to the Internet and autonomous. And they really understand the use case. With the car, it's very easy. When the car comes to you and you don't have to go to your car, the taxi driver principle, but the car will come in the next second. The car utilization grows dramatically. So there is a calculation that utilization grows in autonomous driven vehicles from 5% to 60%, 60. So you need less cars, but the cars are better utilized. Now, what is the business then? You not sell cars anymore. So the business is changed into different business models based on data and utilization. They sell usage. They don't sell products anymore. So if a car company sells usage, then they're interested that the car is used more, better utilized, more usage. Because then they can make more revenue. And they're not interested to sell more cars for less usage, because that's higher cost. So if you think that over, then resources are reduced, utilization is going up, and more productivity we gain. So that is the model that the software engineers or the software entrepreneurs implemented in the Internet of Things. It's all about selling usage, growing utilization, and that is the solution to the next industry with a better footprint and sustainability. And now it comes to space. The space is developing in the right moment, actually, because when you need to sell utilization or usage, you need data. No one wants to sell a car that is not connected because you don't understand utilization. You need to guide the car, you need to understand what utilization is about. Or if you sell a machine, you don't sell machines anymore, you sell the OEE, the overall equipment effectiveness of a machine. You sell the outcome per produced part. So you need to understand from data from the machine what is happening. So otherwise you can't charge utilization. So the machines need to be connected, and the connectivity produces data. And the data connectivity leads to an explosion of data. So what is needed is a higher capacity of data management, and that is moving into space. So the space connectivity allows 100% connectivity, for example, for cars, because the software in the cars need to be in the cloud as well. And if the car loses the connectivity, which happens many times today, because the mobile network operators, they don't cover 100%, then the car doesn't operate anymore. So space is now the key enabler for the Internet of Things. And that goes all in the same time, more or less. The cost disruption in space with the reusable rocket, what we learned, is 40 times less per kilogram than it used to be 10 years ago. Investors like us, we are coming and looking for opportunities to develop space-enabled solutions. So we just conducted a study on the car industry, found 64 use cases that are related to space connectivity, where we are producing a new business of with a potential only in Europe of 920 billion euro for the car industry once they follow the path of trying to connect their cars and try to cooperate with the new space which is now developing. So all in all, I actually believe that the future is bright if we would manage on the new technologies, software, data, AI, to get the lead here and drive the old economy industries into new business models, then we would help also for the issues that we see today to turn them around. And if not, we would, let's say, stuck or come into a crisis that we know from the past would also come along with wars and the loss of peace and dramatic developments. So for me, the outcome is drive technology, education on technology, on the right technology that is required in the future. That is the key solution. Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation, and it raises a lot of questions about integrity of data and everything, but maybe we'll raise them later. And our last panelist, Dr. Eva, will have a presentation. If you can launch it, please.
It's fine, I can start while I talk.
Okay, you can start.
Yes. It's a beautiful thing to be here in the house of knowledge, in the house of science, in the house of curiosity. So I will use the 10 minutes I have to give you a little bit of perspective, because it's what we astronomers can do the best, give perspective. And we can do it because we have a tool that is wonderful for the future, is wonderful for innovation, It's wonderful for vocations, it's wonderful for agriculture even, and it's wonderful for technology. So let's start the presentation. And in this presentation, I'm going to tell you a story. The story started 16,000 years ago, and at that time there was nothing. There was no time, there was no space, and little by little, structures in the density of the universe started to make big things. What are those big things? These big things are galaxies, they are stars. And how do we know it? We know it because we simulate these kind of things. We simulate the universe in boxes called computers. Supercomputers help us to understand what's going on outside, what's going on in the universe. So before there was a lot of discussion on what a small country with, that doesn't belong to the biggest universities, that is not in one of these countries that invest a lot in big infrastructures, can do to understand, can do to be in the forefront of science and technology. They can do simulations, for example. They can use computers to understand the universe as we can do in astrophysics. And how do we know this is true? Well, we don't know, and this is where we need more students, because right now we understand more or less 3% of what's going on in the universe. We understand 3% of the baryonic matter. 97% is dark energy, is dark matter, and we don't have a clue of what's going on there. So we need new students, we need new brains, we need new Africans to come into the picture and help us understand what's going on in the universe. And 4,700 years ago, what happens was something. How can I pass this? I guess there. 4,500 years ago, we had a planet surrounding an average star. And a few years ago, we started developing the technology that allow us get out of that planet. We've been doing this for less than 50 years. We have been traveling into space, and many times we lose the perspective of how far we have gone. We only made it to the moon with humans. Yes, in the solar system we have gone a little bit farther, but so far we haven't even left home, we can say. And I like this picture in particular because it has the Earth, it has the oceans, it has something that is at risk right now. We have global challenges that we are facing that is dealing with climate change. Climate change is something that we learn, that we started to appreciate when we started to have tools that allow us to see our planet from space. In fact, the first perspective, the ecological movement, started with the Apollo missions. It started with this vision of the Earth from the moon. And here we can see how delicate is this beautiful planet we have. There is just basically a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of Earth that separates us from space, that separates us from the conditions that doesn't allow us to stay alive. And we know very well because we have a wonderful talk this morning from an astronaut that shows us how hard it is to live in space. And they were only at 400 kilometers from the surface. So, to the moon, we made it. It's a three-day trip, but that's nothing. This is just around the corner. The moon is right here. And there we can see the surface, and we can learn many things from our companion in space. We can learn about luck. You see the surface of the moon, and you see that it's full of impacts. Some of these impacts hit us at the time of the dinosaurs on the Earth, and we are here because of that, basically. So we are here because of a question of luck. And we talk about transformation, let's think about the wonderful transformation that took place at the moment our satellite was formed, when another planet hit our own planet, and out of the debris, our satellite was created. And when we talk about traveling, let's go a little bit further. This is Mars. This is not the Earth. And this beautiful cloud is a cloud on the surface, on the atmosphere of Mars. And this is seen by one of the rovers, one of the cameras that is in one of the rovers that is measured continuously the atmosphere of the red planet. Why do we do these kind of things? Because we have curiosity. And why is important? I mean, why we put money into these kind of endeavors? Why we put money to try to get to Mars, to go to the moon? First of all, because we are curious. Second of all, because it will help us solve the problems we have on our own planet. Do you think that the money that we put into space stays in space? No. It goes back to our cell phones. Goes back to the satellites that allow us to communicate between us. It goes back to these applications that are very useful in agriculture that allow us to see the amount of water we have in the reserves on Earth. It will go back to develop systems that help humans stay alive outside of our planet, because we have to develop systems that are self-sustained. It's not easy to keep a human alive outside of the Earth, and we have to develop a lot of technology in order for that to happen. Systems that are ecologically stable, that are loops, that maintain and sustain plants in space. So, this is us. We saw this picture this morning from far away, and this is us farther away even. No borders, a delicate planet. We better take care of it. I mean, this is the perspective that astronomy gives us. I mean, we are a tiny dot in the middle of nothing. And that's all we have, really. We have nothing else. So let's stop the nonsense and take care of it on everything that is on it. So let's go a little bit farther. We are the fifth planet from the sun. This is not a scale. If we look into where we have been in the solar system, we have visits, we have probes in almost every planet and moon of the solar system. We have made it with proofs to the border of the solar system, but that's it. That's how far we have been. And what is beyond? Beyond there are stars, planets that we know exist out there. There are more than 4,000 planets that we have found orbiting other stars. And this is completely new. This is something that we didn't know 30 years ago. We only have the example of our own solar system, and we thought that probably planets existed orbiting other stars, but we didn't know of the existence of any of them. This is not, by the way, this is not the way they look, because the way they look is just tiny dots. Those are artistic recreations of some of the planets that are out there. And this is how a planet outside our solar system looks like. If you've never seen a planet outside of the solar system, here you have 4. The star is in the middle, it's being covered because it's very bright. It has a lot of light, so we have to cover it to see the weak, tiny structures that are the planets that are orbiting other stars. So there you are. This is very exciting. This is something that is new, that we have been able to do with technology, with the technology we have created as humans, and thinking about it and putting resources and looking at it. And again, what this gives us, it gives us perspective. It helps us understand what's going on out there. In fact, one of the main reasons we know that there is climate change and we know that there is something that we have to do about it is because we look at Venus. And looking at Venus, we understood that there is something terribly wrong going on that planet. And now we know that what was going on Venus probably could be what is happening on our own planet if we don't do nothing to change that tendency. So how far have we been with probes? I mean, here we don't even see our own solar system. This is where we live, in a galaxy like this. inhabit one of the spiral arms in the outskirts. And we are just one of thousands of galaxies that they are out there with millions of stars. And this is, again, a simulation of what happens when we put all the physics we know inside computer simulations. Why do I keep looking and showing computing simulations? Because we are in a technological university, and I think these kind of things are things that you can do very easily here, and that can help us understand what's going on in the universe. So here we have the evolution of the universe. This is a box. Inside this box, what we have is stars that are being born, stars that are exploding as supernovas, and that they are creating the chemical elements that we are all made of. We are all made of carbon. We have a university that is based on phosphates, basically, because it's what is providing the money, I believe, to funding this whole structure. And nothing of this will exist without the nuclear reactions that take place in the internal regions of stars and without these explosions. So the universe starts as a very simple thing. Just in 3 minutes, we have hydrogen, we have helium, and traces of lithium. And with time, what we have is the beautiful diversity of chemical elements that surround us. And this is probably a different view of the chemical periodic table. And we put it here in astronomical perspective, because here we have the elements and what is the origin. We have some elements that are created in the Big Bang. We have elements that just come from stars like our sun. We have stars that, elements that come from the merging of neutron stars. And we can do this path. We can follow every chemical element that you have, that you see in this picture, and we can trace it back to stars. So we know that all the carbon we are all made of, it was made inside stars like the sun. We know that the phosphorus came from supernova, so on and so forth. So whenever you wonder where you come from, I tell you, you come from there. This is your origin. You were once inside a star. And this is perspective. This is where we come from, and this is the transformation that the universe with time allows. So again, this is what we are. This is where we are. And we have made a very long trip to make it here, so let's just keep the only place we have to live, because there is no planet B. We don't have the technology to move or to transform any other planet. We just don't do it. We have the technology to help this planet to survive if we put the resources to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this brilliant journey. For those of you who read Spanish, Professor Belaber has written a book called The Thousand Craters on the Moon, so if you want to read it. Thank you so much, and I'm really sorry, but we're getting short of time, so I will wrap up in a minute what you've said so far. And the main idea that was introduced by the panelists is the convergence between the knowledge and the future, education being the pillar, the most important pillar, and being optimistic about what we can do with all this knowledge and all this science. And Dr. Ulrich mentioned the convergence between the car industry and the space industry, with the software being the base of the new economy, I would say. So we had the case of Estonia with the e-democracy, I would say, e-republic, with the digitalization of all the processes. Professor Liuge mentioned how important it is to specify the importance of words we use and the difference between labor and jobs, and how we could define our place in this new economy. Professor Bruno Gérard has mentioned that we should focus on training and education, which is the case of our presence here. So I would like to invite Mrs. Nawal Shraibi and Mustafa Ashouban, just for 1 second. Just to conclude, and I would like then to call Mr. President, if you want to join us after the word of Nawal and Mustafa. Naouel Shraimi, the Executive Director of the IAS, and Mustafa Shuban, who's heading
Well, we are coming to the end of our fabulous conference. I would love to thank everyone here. And as you know, this journey actually started a year ago. And it started with a great friend, a brother, and someone that I count on. It took us 5 minutes to see the big perspective. And this person is the chief of staff of the University UM6P Polytechnic, Mr. Khalid Baddo. So please, I would like to recognize that. The second thing is, once we took the decision, I left Morocco 20 years ago almost. I never worked with Moroccans before, except, being engaged in a little capacity. But I have to say something very important in here. Through him, I was introduced to the best of the talent of Morocco can have. And that talent actually can raise and can be flourished, and this is the capital of Africa and of Morocco and the Kingdom of Morocco. And their ambassadorship is absolutely unmatched. And besides that, down the road, I had the privilege also to work with my great colleagues at the Institute for Advanced Studies. And we debated so long, vehemently about many things. But at the end of the day, we come up with factual decisions for the best interest for the Institute, for the best interest of the university, for the best interest of the Kingdom of Morocco, and the best interest for the humanity at the end. And in this occasion, I would like also to thank the warriors behind the scene. And please allow me if I forget somebody, because my mind is going fast, more than enough. And here I would like to thank our Executive Director, Madame Naouel Shraimi. Second, I would like to thank Raphael, our professor, and also said, in the President's Cabinet, I would like to thank Amin Al-Hababi. And besides that, there is Ali and his team, the fabulous team, the people that they are taking actions in a spot, efficiency, and also I would like to thank a gentleman that I call my warrior, a young man. His name is Ahmed Al-Azraq, and another gentleman that I call in the middle of the night from the United States of America, and he's awake here early morning, responding to my text messages, to my calls, Jabran, and also Fatim Zahra Marfouk. And of course, there are many people behind the scenes that they are working hard. And here, I would like also to seize this occasion to thank Al-Mahdi Al-Muallim, Yasmin, for the hard work. And besides that, I might forget people that they are really day in and day out working hard to make your journey unforgettable, and also to make sure that once you go back to your home countries, you take back, as Mr. Andre Azoulay said yesterday, the Moroccanity with you, because we are celebrating your country here with us in Morocco, in the Kingdom of Morocco, at the University UM6P Polytechnic University. But this is not going to be able to happen without the leadership and the vision of a great friend that I met at Harvard. In 2 minutes, we take a decision, and this is what we call polytime, because you have to be efficient taking decision. And this gentleman is the president of the University UM6P Polytechnic, Mr. Hisham Al-Habti. Please, a round of applause. I don't know if I will be able, to describe all these emotions that I have so far, and also I know for sure that this is a legacy that we are building together, and this is the next narrative that we will build together, because our narrative is very simple, straightforward. We are contributing positively to build a humanity together from different backgrounds and walks of lives. At the same time, I would like to thank my great friends, ladies and gentlemen, and the excellencies that they are coming from all over the world, 5 continents here. took also the text messages and emails responding from Uruguay, Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, Africa. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would love to have my friend Khalid and Mr. Al-Habti to come here say a few words to conclude this lovely mission, because we are on the mission. And our mission is to go ahead and build humanity together. Thank you so much, Mr. Al-Habti. If you can join us, please. Khalid, if you can join us, please. But at least we can have a souvenir picture together here. Thank you.
No problem. So just few words after to this, more than 2 days, because it started on Tuesday. And I want just to express my gratitude to all the participants coming from the 5 continents. Being here today is the capital of knowledge, capital of wisdom, capital of collective intelligence, capital of I don't know what, so you name it. And I'm really happy to see that what we are working for on a daily basis, it's now coming a reality, which is enabling the youth, the African youth, to have access to brilliant minds like the ones we had the chance to have here at UM6P during these 3 last days. It started like a dream, but here at UM6P, we are used to transform the dreams into realities very fast, sometimes too fast, but we don't have time. We need to leverage on any capabilities to, I liked what Habjismi said, we need Africa to be a part of this journey, and this is exactly what we are working for. This morning there was another event regarding Africa, and I think here we have a great opportunity, and someday in 5, 10, 20 years you could tell yourself, that you have contributed in the fact that Africa now is a part of this great journey regarding the knowledge in different areas. So on behalf of UM6P community, I want really to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I want to ask you to give a very warm applause to these guys here and the people behind the scene for the great work you have done so far. So thank you so much, and welcome any day. Not every day, but someday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On this word, I declare the closure of this wonderful conference. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
La définition de la propriété qui est juste, tu s'amuses.